Welcome back, everybody, to First Coast Living. Anthony Crothers, chiropractic physician, better known as Doc Tony, is back with us. And today he's talking about Florida's no-fault insurance law and how it's going to affect all Florida drivers. And today he's joined by attorney Lawrence Najam. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Najam, let's talk about, I'm afraid people hear law and insurance and all that, and they're already like, oh, why do I have to pay attention to this? I already have insurance.
Sure.
So we all have this insurance. Talk about the present law the present insurance we all have.
Well, about 40 years ago, Florida passed a law called the No-Fault Automobile Insurance Law. And no fault basically says that regardless of whose fault it is, your automobile insurance provides you with $10,000 in PIP, personal injury protection, available to use for medical bills or for wage loss. That law also allowed you to go to your doctor of choice and would pay for most of your medical care. There aren't restrictions on when you can go to your doctor. If, for example, you have an accident and you're feeling okay, you want to wait a couple of weeks before you see a doctor, you can do that.
Well, sometimes with those little injuries, it takes 3-4 days for you to realize, wow, my neck, my back is really hurting. And Dr. Tony, pipe in here, how did that help you, you care for your patients with the current system, with the current coverage?
Well, it was just a much more natural, simpler system. Like Lawrence just said, and like you just said, people after accidents, they don't always immediately feel the pain. And sometimes a lot of individuals that do, they'll wait a couple weeks just to see what happens.
Tough it out.
You got it, because they just feel, hey, this is going to go away.
Right.
And then let's say it's 3 weeks down the road and they realize, hey, this pain didn't go away. Now the laws have changed for those types of individuals. And like Lawrence said, in the past, these people were always covered. And as far as me treating them as a physician, I was able to render good care to them, help people get back on the road to recovery for minimal soft tissue damage. Now, with the change in laws, people are sitting in a potentially dangerous situation.
Now let's talk about the change in the law. Why the change and how is it going to affect Florida drivers?
Well, automobile insurance has been a hot potato for years, and there is a perception of fraud in the system. So last spring, the law was rewritten. It will go into effect January of 2013. And what it essentially changed is a few things. There's a 14-day rule, meaning when you have an accident, you have to see a doctor within 14 days. And if you don't, you do not get any of the benefits that you have under the present law.
Which is really important to know this.
It is, because the $10,000 of benefits that you have for medical will not be available if you don't see a doctor within the first 14 days.
So that's one big change.
That's one big change. Then when you do see that doctor within the first 14 days, that doctor has to make a determination as to whether or not you have an emergency medical condition.
So you could be going to your primary care. Your primary care then has to make this decision.
That decision. And the emergency medical care definitions under the new statute are somewhat vague. So if the doctor does not believe you have an emergency medical condition that needs immediate treatment, you do not get the $10,000. You get $2,500 of coverage to treat you for those injuries. If he does believe you have an emergency medical condition, you do then get the $10,000.
Now, what do you have to do after that? Do you have to go to the emergency room? Because when you say the word emergency, what next steps do I have to take for that?
No, you can go to your doctor of choice, but that doctor of choice is subject to the original diagnosis that you had on the first visit, if that first visit was within 14 days.
So if it doesn't go away after $2,500 worth of treatment, then it's now out of your pocket?
And that's one of the issues. It's out of your pocket. It potentially could be out of the health insurance pocket. And there are a number of issues that will be coming up with that new law.
Now, when you mention those issues, let's go back to you, Dr. Tony. How does that now change the way you're able to care for your patients?
Well, as I mentioned on other shows, when people are involved in specifically rear-end collisions, it's what I've talked about. $2,500 is not going to cover the treatment that you need. So when individuals get injured in a car accident, these injuries just don't go away. So as Lawrence just mentioned, it's going to show up in other parts of our society and other parts of the healthcare system, such as your private insurance, work-related injuries that could happen. So it's a comprehensive problem that we all have to deal with. The bottom line is this: people get injured as a result of car accidents. If there's not coverage there to take care of people that are injured, they're just not going to go away. So they're going to surface somewhere.
And Mr. Najam mentioned that you had, you could go when you felt the pain, when you felt a problem, or those who tough it out. I know people who won't even take an aspirin. But now you've got to go right away. So are you seeing any kind of impact? We always hear right now about, overflooded emergency rooms. I mean, are you seeing an impact on the system now itself as well?
I think when the general public, the consumers, if you will, realize the changes they're going to have number one, they're going to have questions. Where do I go? Number two, the emergency rooms will probably be full because folks are not going to know whether they have the benefits or not. The first 14 days are critical. So if you tough it out, or if you work, if you take kids to soccer games, if you have to
Right.
do things that keep you from going those first 14 days, you essentially become punished.
Because mom and dads usually put themselves last.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to leave it on, okay, now we're just stuck with this. Is there anything consumers can do to impact these changes? Is there anything, what kind of voice do they have?
I think initially we're going to have probably a number of lawsuits that are going to challenge the effectiveness of these laws. But realistically, for the short term, we look like we're stuck with them.
And Dr. Tony, I always want to give you the last word because you'll take it whether I give it to you or not. But you're always using your segment to let people be aware, the consumer awareness, because you really want people to be aware
Right.
and wary of fraud that's out there.
Right, and what I want to tell people is how we got in this situation. One way we were placed here is by calling the wrong numbers. You don't want to go to just any clinic or any attorney, because when these people defraud the system, they defraud all of us. They hurt the insurance companies, and this is one reason that we're sitting in the situation we have right now. I don't want to get into the politics, but this gives the lobbyists the opportunity to present this to our legislators that put all of us now in this situation, which essentially we're the worst covered in all 50 states, and in my opinion, better off in Mexico where insurance is not a requirement.
Well, there's something, obviously we're going to see some ripple effects of this. We're going to see some impact. Thank you both so much for being here. Thanks to Lawrence Najim and Doc Tony for his expert advice as always, and for sponsoring this segment and educating us on this new change in the law. So if you find yourself in some need of some auto accidents assistance, Doc Tony says give him a call, 1-888-888-8863 for a free consultation at one of his 2 convenient locations, or you can visit his website, www.doctony.org. Because as you know, Doc Tony says, you, my friend, deserve to be living pain-free. Thanks, guys, so much.